continues.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, joined now on the Wester Hotline by Armando Salguero, longtime NFL reporter, frequent guest of our show, we are very proud to say. Armando, Bulldog and I were talking earlier, and we felt it was important for you to know that even though it's when there's a Dolphins thing or a Bills-Dolphins game is when we call you, we recognize that you do cover the whole league. I wanted to make sure you didn't think you were still at the Herald and just sort of on the beat.
Yeah, you also recognize that tomorrow is July 4th and nobody else is working, so you decided he'll do it. He's easy. He'll be a guest anytime.
Well, I can't say that I thought that, but we're very happy that you were free, at least for a few minutes here. So, speaking of the Dolphins, Armando, get
ready for 20 minutes on the Dolphins,
the
Armando.
trade here. People are wondering what the Dolphins are doing. Do you think that that's fair to say?
I think the Dolphins should be wondering, what are we doing? What's going on? We're net minus on talent this offseason, and they are. They clearly are. They're not going to admit as much, obviously, but look, last year they signed Jalen Ramsey to an extension. And 1 year later, they trade him. Jalen Ramsey's good. And I know that he has a reputation as maybe hard to deal with and maybe even among some, metrics nerds saying that he's declining. Guess what? He's still good. And he's definitely better than anyone else the Dolphins had at the cornerback position when he was on the team and now that he's not on the team. And so that is a net minus that they found the need to trade him. The reason that they found the need to trade him is because he and head coach Mike McDaniel butted heads. They lost, as it was told to me, they lost respect for each other, which is not a great, situation when you had just, again, paid the guy last year and gave him a raise when you didn't really have to. So that's a negative. Teron Armstead retired. So their good left tackle is gone. That's a negative. Calais Campbell, who they wanted back, decided that he'd rather play for the Arizona Cardinals. So he saw a situation between the Dolphins, where he played collegiately in Miami, by the way, and Arizona, where obviously he had played previously, and decided the best place to be was Arizona. All those guys that I just mentioned, they were team captains last year, and they're gone.
You mentioned the loss of respect on both sides of that relationship, Ramsey and the head coach McDaniel. Could that be partly or maybe mostly generated from the fact that the impression I get from this distance, and you can correct me if you know better, you probably would expect that you do, that McDaniel kind of lost control there and guys were kind of coming and going and not as dialed in, and maybe Ramsey, observing that, thought, my head coach needs to take the reins here and take control, or was Ramsey like the ringleader of the guys just kind of doing whatever they want?
Well, I don't know that. I'll be honest with you. I don't know the exact details of why they went in different directions. It's easy to say that at the end of the year, Mike McDaniel, it's also accurate to say, which is good, said that the Dolphins needed a culture change because guys had been late to things and missing things and so forth. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, thanks, but you're in charge of that.
Right.
You're the guy that's got to fix that. The problem is that the guy that has to fix it had spent the first couple of years of his tenure being a quote-unquote player-friendly, maybe friend of players, easygoing guy, minimal rules. And now all of a sudden he wants culture change, right? That's hard to do. It's great to be the friend of the players when everything's going good. Things haven't been going good for the Dolphins the last couple of years. They missed the playoffs last year, and they started off looking terrible, and they still haven't been able to figure out how to beat good teams. And when you have all those things piling up, friendly coach trying to turn and shift the culture to hard-ass coach is a tough thing to do. Nearly impossible, I would say.
Right, if it's the same guy, especially. We went through this. This won't take long here, but I don't know if anybody else is thinking of Don Granato with the Sabres here in our audience.
Armando isn't.
I wouldn't think you would be, Armando, but we went through this with the hockey team. Like, he took over, and it was kind of like, all right, everybody just don't worry about making mistakes, and don't worry about defense. Just go play to the best of your ability, and then we'll figure the rest out and put the puzzle together. And then when it came time to put the puzzle together, it was just like, wait, the same guy that was our buddy and telling us to just go, off to the races is now telling us to be mindful about back checking, and it just doesn't compute. Even if it's reasonable to ask, it's just hard to have the same guy play both roles.
Absolutely. And no, I wasn't thinking about, right. the Sabres. I'm too busy shining up the Stanley Cup down here.
Right.
Oh, sick burn.
Right. Armando, tell us about Chris Greer and just kind of what explains a 9th or 10th season. 2016 is when he started, so I think this would be his 10th year, 25.
I don't know, dude. Don't ask me to.
You don't know
that. I mean, and by the way, so we all know that the Dolphins have not won a playoff game since December of 2000.
Yes.
Right? They have the longest playoff win drought in the NFL. Chris Greer began working for the Miami Dolphins in 2002.
Oh.
And so throughout his tenure in the Dolphins scouting department, personnel department, front office, leading the front office, they have not won a playoff game. He hired or was part of the hiring of Adam Gase. Adam Gase was fired. He hired Brian Flores. Brian Flores was fired. He hired Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel now enters the season on the hot seat. And I don't understand how anyone survives that. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Now we're talking about the Sabres. Right. Now we're really talking about the Sabres. And, it's Mike Greer's brother, for what it's worth. There are lots of parallels, Armando. Who knew?
I think Chris, clearly has his good points and clearly has brought together a lot of good talent. The problem is he does these things that just drive me crazy. Like, if a player has an injury history, Chris Greer will love that guy. And I don't understand why that is, considering the fact that the guys that come in with injury histories often guess what happens to them when they become Miami Dolphins? Oh, they get injured. So Jalen Phillips came to the Dolphins after having retired medically in college. He's missed most of the last 2 years because of injuries. Meantime, Greg Rousseau, who was his teammate at the University of Miami, got a contract extension with the Bills. Teron Armstead came to the Dolphins with an injury history. I had a coach on the Saints tell me he's a walking ACL injury ready to happen. And he had this long problem with the Saints with injuries. Last year, he did not practice at all because they had to keep him off the practice field. he wasn't ready to walk around really until late Thursday. And so he would do the walkthrough, on Friday and Saturday, and that was that from a physical standpoint. All these guys, Bradley Chubb, the Denver Broncos traded Bradley Chubb because he had an ACL issue, actually a couple, and they didn't want to pay him a new contract. So they traded him to the Dolphins at a premium, by the way. The Dolphins gave him a contract, and Bradley Chubb didn't play all of last year because of what? He has an ACL issue. There's been Achilles issues. It's like I don't get it. Tua Tagovailoa came to the Dolphins. Why? Because at one point he was supposedly the best quarterback in that class, and then the hip injury happened, and then the Dolphins picked him ahead of Justin Herbert, who is a monster. He is a walking, living, breathing power forward of a quarterback. But the Dolphins went with Tua. Tua has had ankle, shoulder, and, of course, concussion issues with the Dolphins.
This is a pretty dire picture, Armando. What is there a way through where Miami can get back to being a team that can contend for the AFC East, or is it too far gone to you?
No, I mean, obviously, those are a lot of big-name players that I just mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. With the exception of Teron Armstead, who's gone, those guys remain on the team. So if there is a season where everyone's healthy, they're going to be okay. They're going to be good. But how often does that happen in the NFL? That's my point. When you rely on a dozen guys to be your stars and your highly paid stars to have success, you need all those guys to be healthy to be, relevant. And that hasn't been the case of late.
And we haven't even talked about Tyreek Hill in any of this, because that was a pretty rough trip around the sun last year for him, it seemed like.
Another guy that, look, Tyreek is very engaging. He's a fun guy to be around. It's bad when he is also a team captain. He quit the final game of last season in the fourth quarter, declined to continue playing against the Jets. He declined to continue playing after that season finale, like 5 minutes after he has to be traded. I wonder what's going through Tyreek Hill's mind. I don't want to play for you, and I want to be traded at that point. He has since recanted, but in an offseason in which he recanted, he's also had his mother-in-law call the cops on him for abuse of his wife, who now is divorcing him. So now he's going through a divorce. That's going to be great for Tyreek Hill's mindset in 2025. And it's just, I don't know, man. Look, the Kansas City Chiefs didn't want to see Tyreek Hill go, but when he did, they won multiple Super Bowls.
That's confirmed. I don't need us to keep going to keep winding you up. A fun name, though, to add to this list is Darren Waller, all of a sudden, out of retirements. I mean, he's the Jonnu Smith replacement, I guess. Can one be optimistic? Waller at his peak was very good.
He was amazing. He was perhaps arguably the best tight end in the NFL. And then injuries struck. Did I mention injuries previously?
Yes, I know. I felt like he should not be left out.
Yeah. So injuries struck. His career with the Raiders kind of went in downhill. The Giants took a chance on him. He was injured again, and then he decided he wanted to retire. to become a rapper.
Yeah.
So the Dolphins traded Jonnu Smith to the Steelers as part of the Jalen Ramsey for Minka Fitzpatrick trade. And, they decided that they're going to bring the oft-injured rapper out of retirement and have him be their guy. And they're not paying him a lot, but that's not the point. The point is they are now counting on him. And when you count on players who have injury histories or who have been talking about getting traded or have, retired or have
or all the above,
medically retired in their past, chances are not great that what lies ahead is all going to be smooth sailing. These guys have flags that you got to consider, and it seems to me that they're not often considered quite enough.
You mentioned at the outset of all this, Jalen Ramsey still, you think, is a good player, very good player maybe. How about Minka Fitzpatrick returning to Miami?
Yeah, so, I mentioned Chris Greer, right, the general manager. You got to give him his props. He turned a terrible situation with Jalen Ramsey into, at least a, I would say, even Steven type of situation, because he got a really good player back. Minka Fitzpatrick is 28 years old. Jalen Ramsey's 30. Minka Fitzpatrick is a 3-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. He's a good player. So the Dolphins somehow managed to get a good player plus a 5th-round pick for a player that everybody knew they had to trade because Jalen Ramsey absolutely was not going to go back to the Dolphins, because the Dolphins absolutely didn't want Jalen Ramsey back. So despite the entire NFL knowing that the Dolphins had to trade Jalen Ramsey, they basically got a good player out of the whole transaction when they easily could have just gotten destroyed in the trade.
Armando, what do you think of the team Ramsey went to? And this, because the Steelers can be talked about, I mean, I'm not criticizing you at all here, but condescendingly with Rodgers and just yes, they've had playoff teams, but they've gone out right away year after year here. And they're an easy team to pick on, is all I'm saying. Maybe like Miami in this way. Do you think that can work in Pittsburgh? Would you expect like another season like the ones they've had recently, or something else?
So I'm the guy that thinks that Aaron Rodgers is still good. If you look at his tape from last year, I know that he gets caught up in the Jets were a disaster wash last year. But if you separate things out, he is was a 40-year-old guy coming back from an Achilles injury, a ruptured Achilles, and he threw 28 touchdown passes with 11 interceptions. Was that outstanding? Did he miss throws? Did he miss moments where he could have been better and could have raised his game to an MVP level? Yes. But was he a bad quarterback? Dude, I would say a lot of teams would take 28 touchdown passes with 11 interceptions and 4,000 yards, okay? And his arm is still, lively. He's still a hard worker. A lot of people don't like him because he has a different sort of worldview about everything. But I still think that he's solid, and now he's 2 years removed from the Achilles. So at the end of the year, he was moving better than he was at the beginning of the year. I think DK Metcalf is really good. I think they got rid of a guy that is kind of a weirdo.
Pickens.
Yes, and they're putting themselves in a position to a one shot at it, try to make something happen this year. and next year they're going to reset because they've got 12 draft picks and they've got cap space, and everybody's going to be set. They re-signed their general manager Omar Khan today. They've already got Mike Tomlin locked up. Those guys are going to be around. The Steelers, come what may, are going to be, staying the course. And I believe that they're going to factor. They're going to be a team to think about, assuming that the T.J. Watt situation, in which they're still negotiating a contract extension, works out. T.J. Watt, that's not to be sneezed at. T.J. Watt wants to be the highest paid edge rusher in the NFL. That means he's got to make more money than Myles Garrett, who's making, on average, $40 million a year.